Hi, my name is Carly Turner. I am a current high school student, and on this channel, I want to be talking about is AI infringing on copyright and intellectual property laws? So, taking this from a high schooler's perspective, I think that it is because I see kids using AI almost every day in school. They use it to write essays, to generate photos, and just basically create anything. And I think that the web scraping that AI does to contain all this information is inherently infringing on copyright laws because it can generate images of copyrighted characters. It can take writings and put them into an author's style. It can, if you put in someone's name to a prompt, say, if I ask AI, write me a song that sounds like Taylor Swift wrote it. AI would write a song that sounds like Taylor Swift wrote it, and they would use some of her common metaphors. They would use just her style and her tone in her writing. And I think that that is inherently just copying someone else's work because you are not only creating something using the words of someone else, but you're also just publishing it as your own. And I also want to take this from the perspective AI is creating images of things that like AI cannot just create an image out of nowhere. It has images that it's being fed, and those images can sometimes be copyrighted works. So I think yes, AI is infringing on copyright laws. But we're not here to talk about my opinions. We're here to talk about the facts and what other people who are closely involved in this have to say. So in this episode, I'm just going to be talking about some specific cases and just getting into some of the details of this argument. And then in future episodes, I'm hopefully interviewing a lawyer and an AI developer, and they can talk about their perspective on this. They will not be on the show, but I will be asking them questions and tracking their answers. So, first, what we need to understand is that there is fair use when it comes to copyrighted works. You are allowed to use someone else's work and kind of not change it, but you're allowed to critique it. You're allowed to report it on the news. You're allowed to teach it to someone, and you're allowed to create a parody. These things are not considered copyright because they are not claiming the original work as their own, and they're not taking pieces of that original work to create something like similar to it almost. But there are no specific rules on fair use. It is kind of case by case. You just can't really copy someone else's work and pass it off as your own, is basically what they're saying, but they still allow you to use it for the practical things. Now, what is a derivative work? That would be, for instance, taking a book and making it into a movie. And in that instance, the original creator of the book still holds power over what happens to their work. So it doesn't just, you can't just make a movie off of someone else's book and claim it as your own, because it is not your story. But in the case of AI, if an AI model generates an output similar to copyrighted work, it could be, they could be held liable for infringing on copyright. But overall, the big question is, does copyright apply to generative AI and its creations? So my first source is Harvard Business School. I will put a screenshot of whatever source I used right here. And just a couple of direct quotes from them. AI platforms recover patterns and relationships which they then use to create rules and then make judgments and predictions when responding to a prompt. They also said that there are claims that companies trained AI tools using data lakes with thousands or even millions of unlicensed works. This just kind of gives us an inside perspective on how AI works. So the first quote kind of says that AI uses this information to train itself on its behaviors and how it should respond. And then that second one says that they are using thousands and millions of unlicensed works. So we're going to get a little bit deeper with a specific case, Anderson versus Stability AI. Now, in the case of Anderson versus Stability AI, I'm going to be putting my source here. It is the NYU Journal of Intellectual Property and Entertainment Law. So in 2022, cartoonist Sarah Anderson wrote the New York Times essay titled, "The Alt-Right Manipulated My Comic and Then AI Claimed It." She wrote about how the far right does misconstrue her work, but then she also wrote about how when she used her name as a prompt in Stability AI's image generation, it came out with a panel that was just like hers. Her same style, the same kind of humor that she has in them. I will actually put a photo of them side by side right here. This was also on the Journal of Intellectual Property and Entertainment Law. But you can see there that they are very similar and that this could be seen as them copying her own work. So in January 12th, 2023, Sarah Anderson, along with other artists, filed a class action copyright infringement lawsuit against multiple AI companies, including Stability AI. The claim was that these AI corporations were infringing on copyright law by using artists' work to train their AI that could then generate things that were very similar to their own works, but for faster and cheaper. Because when artists are creating something, it does take time and it does take that creativity of their own. And honestly, creativity is something you really can't create. It's like a fingerprint. Everyone has something different, right? You don't want your work to be copied and reproduced by machines, especially. And I think that was the biggest argument, is these artists want their own work to be theirs and they don't want it to be able to be recreated so easily. So, in August 12, 2024, the U.S. District Judge William denied Stability's AI motion to dismiss, meaning that this case will go to trial. Trial is set to begin on September 8th, 2026, and I will be reporting on that when that happens. And if Anderson wins, this ruling will set precedent over how the U.S. regulates AI and kind of what we can think about it in the context of copyright. So the next case I want to talk about is Getty Images also versus Stability AI. I will put my source right here, but just kind of a little summary I have. So January 16th, 2023, various entities in the Getty Images, as well as the contributor entity, Getty, alleged Stability AI had infringed on copyright laws by developing, training, and using Stable Diffusion image generation with the Getty Images. Their main argument was that Stability AI was doing model training by web scraping. So when they were doing web scraping, they were obviously picking up Getty Images and using that to train their models. In response to this, Stability AI argued that the model training did not occur in the UK, which is where the trial was happening, and since it was out of their territory of jurisdiction, Getty had to drop the primary infringement claims that they had, which was that the model training was happening with Getty Images. And because Getty could not prove that the web scraping and model training occurred in the UK, the judgment could not decide if that was infringement. So, therefore, the trial became focused on the secondary copyright infringement and trademark under UK law. But because their case wasn't just strong anymore without their main claims, on November 4th, 2025, the Court of England and Wales ruled that Stable Diffusion did not store, contain, or reproduce copyrighted works. And there was also a claim that Stability AI had copied Getty's watermark, and the court was unable to determine if these were widespread and if they continued past the update of Stable Diffusion image generation. So, what I want you to take away from these two cases is that there is still so much confusion on how to create policy around AI and copyright, because we can see in the Anderson versus Stability AI that there is an argument to be had because of the rejected motion to dismiss. But I just want you to keep up with that throughout September of 2026 and just kind of see where that goes and what the main arguments are, because I think Anderson's argument is right. I think that those panels are very similar, and I think that if AI wins this, then they're kind of just like, you can create anyone else's work and not face any punishment. And then on the Getty versus Stability AI as well, I think it's unfortunate that they could not prove that the model training occurred in the UK, because I think they had a very strong case with that, with the claim that the model training was using Getty Images. And I'm interested to see any future cases that come of this AI versus copyright, because on a more, not what I have written down, but on a more personal level, I think that small journalists are writing things and they're producing them and publishing them, and AI is also using that to train their models. But these writers, they are not getting paid that much and they're doing hard work, and the AI is just consuming their media and is able to use their information in their styles and just reproduce it. I think it is totally not fair. I think computers already have the advantage over us for speed and creations and that kind of thing. And I think there's going to be a lot of future arguments about this. I don't think we've seen really what AI is capable of yet, but I think there's a lot of future conversations to be had about how do we control AI's consumption of our media. But anyways, I'm going to try to do videos probably weekly, so make sure you stay tuned, and I will be interviewing a lawyer hopefully in my next one, or in 2 episodes. But yeah, just in the comments or just in your own head, honestly, just think about, how do you feel about AI using other people's works to train their models, and how do you feel that AI is allowed to create things that look just like someone else's?